Waitress spills coffee on black customer's face, but panics upon discovering he is her boss. In a busy city in the United States, the restaurant Urban Vista becomes the backdrop for an incident that goes far beyond what it seems. Sarah, an ambitious waitress, believes she is one step away from getting a promotion, but an unexpected encounter with a customer will lead her to confront her own beliefs. When she spills coffee on James, a black man she assumes is just another patron, the revelation that he is in fact the new owner of the restaurant forces her to question everything she thought she knew about herself and the world around her. Sarah Brooks, a 28-year-old white woman, grew up in a small conservative town where her values were shaped by an environment that never challenged racial prejudice. Working as a waitress, she is efficient and professional, but her ingrained biases manifest when she feels threatened. The promotion she desires seems within reach, but an unexpected incident will force her to confront her beliefs and the reality of her actions. On the hectic day that James Turner, a 45-year-old black man and successful businessman, enters Urban Vista, Sarah finds herself nervous and unsettled. In serving the new customer, her insecurity causes her to spill hot coffee on his face, creating an awkward silence in the room. James, who grew up in marginalized neighborhoods and fought to earn the respect he has today, remains calm but questions Sarah firmly. The tension in the air is palpable, and the interaction will lead her down a path of self-discovery. Shortly after the incident, Sarah is called to James's office, where the revelation of his true identity leaves her in shock. As he shares part of his story, James confronts her about her prejudiced attitudes, exposing how microaggressions contribute to systemic racism. The conversation is a turning point, and Sarah finds herself faced with the harsh truth that her actions have real consequences. Faced with the prospect of dismissal, she is forced to reflect on her beliefs and the changes she needs to make in her life. The incident at Urban Vista is not just a matter of a spilled coffee, it is a catalyst for Sarah's personal transformation. As she struggles to understand her shortcomings and their impact, James reaffirms his commitment to confront prejudice, even when it means confronting those close to him. Both characters are taken on a journey of self-discovery and overcoming, where life lessons intertwine in an emotional plot that challenges the viewer to reflect on their own beliefs and attitudes. The tension at Urban Vista still hung in the air after the coffee incident. Sarah, now sitting at one of the tables, felt her heart racing. The conversation with James had shaken her. She could barely process what he had said. In that moment, she felt lost in a sea of conflicting emotions. The idea that her actions, although unintentional, could have hurt someone weighed heavily on her shoulders. How could she have been so insensitive? Deep down, Sarah knew that what had happened was not just a simple workplace accident. It was an opportunity for change, but she felt paralyzed. Looking out the restaurant window, she saw people passing by, each with their own stories and challenges. That sight reminded her of her best friend Lisa, who had always been her support in tough times. Lisa, a free-spirited and open-minded woman, always encouraged her to be more receptive and to question her beliefs. Sarah wondered how she would react if she knew about the incident. Meanwhile, James was in his office, reflecting on the situation. He didn't want to be just a customer who had suffered an accident, but a change agent. He had a mission: to transform Urban Vista into a space where everyone felt welcome, regardless of their background. He knew that this would require much more than just changing the menu or decor. It would necessitate confronting biases, starting with the staff. James also thought about his daughter Mia, who was only 10 years old and beginning to understand the complexities of the world. He wanted her to grow up in an environment where everyone was treated with dignity. As James absorbed all of this, Sarah decided she needed to talk to Lisa. Her friend always had a gift for bringing clarity amidst confusion. After leaving work, she called Lisa, who answered immediately. As soon as Sarah began to recount the incident, her voice trembled. Her friend listened attentively, offering words of support, but also questioning. "Sarah, how did you really feel when you spilled the coffee? And what did you feel when you heard James?" These questions echoed in Sarah's mind as she tried to find answers. That night, as she prepared for bed, Sarah couldn't turn off her mind. James's face, the firmness of his words, haunted her. What she had learned in her hometown felt so distant now. The messages about equality and respect that she thought she understood were being challenged in ways she never imagined. The thought of losing her job scared her, but more than that, the idea of continuing to live with those beliefs left her desperate. The next day, the atmosphere in the restaurant was tense. Sarah arrived early, determined to face the day. James was at his table reviewing some documents, and Sarah felt a knot in her stomach as she approached. When she greeted him, she noticed a slight smile on his face, but also a hint of concern. "Hi, James. I would like to apologize again for what happened yesterday. I really didn't mean to." James gently interrupted her. "Sarah, I appreciate your sincerity, but we need to have a deeper conversation about what happened. What occurred was just a drop in the ocean." He invited her to sit down. Sarah hesitated, but accepted. The dialogue that followed was intense. James not only spoke about his experiences, but also shared stories of other employees who had gone through similar situations. He wanted Sarah to understand that although his intention was not to hurt, his actions had a real impact. As they talked, Sarah began to feel a new strength within herself. The challenges ahead would not be easy, but she was determined to confront her beliefs head-on. The conversation with James not only challenged her, but also ignited a flame of determination. She knew she could not change the past, but she could work to create a better future, both for herself and for those around her. The relationship between Sarah and James began to transform. What was once a simple misunderstanding was now becoming an opportunity for mutual learning. Sarah felt more confident, but she knew that the path ahead would not be simple. Every step would require courage and a willingness to face her own fears and prejudices. This led her to a new understanding. Life lessons are not just about what you learn, but also about how you apply that knowledge in challenging moments. And in that restaurant, an unusual friendship was about to be born, even in the face of difficulties yet to come. The tension at Vista Urbana continued to grow. Sarah and James were sitting at the table, but the atmosphere was far from light. As Sarah tried to absorb James's words, a growing concern began to form within her. She knew that the conversation needed to go beyond a simple apology. It was a matter of change, of personal and professional growth. However, every time she tried to articulate her thoughts, a wave of insecurity paralyzed her. James, noticing Sarah's internal struggle, decided to be more direct. "You need to understand that it's not just about what happened to me. It's about how we can create a more welcoming environment for everyone. What do you think you could change about your behavior or the way you interact with customers?" James's question hit her like a punch in the stomach. Sarah felt a knot form in her throat. It was a difficult thing to face. She had always considered herself a friendly and understanding person, but now she was beginning to realize that somehow she had let her own limiting beliefs interfere with her interaction with others. What could she change? Doubt consumed her, and the fear of failing once again paralyzed her. Meanwhile, at the back of the restaurant, some employees were watching the scene with curious looks. Among them was Marco, a waiter who had always had a critical view of the work environment. He approached the table, interrupting the conversation with an air of distrust. "Hi everyone, what's going on here?" His voice was laden with sarcasm, and Sarah felt her face heat up. She knew that Marco did not look favorably on any attempt at change. For him, everything was about keeping things as they were. James took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "We're just trying to better understand how we can improve the experience at the restaurant, Marco. It affects all of us." But Marco didn't seem convinced. Improve the experience? Or do you just want to feel better about your own guilt? People will always find an excuse to complain. Why care? Marco's words cut like a knife. Sarah looked at James, who was visibly frustrated. She felt the tension rising, and the conversation that should have been constructive was turning into a battleground. The insecurity she felt began to turn into anger. How could Marco be so insensitive? She wanted to protest, but the words got stuck in her mind. The day went on, and Sarah couldn't escape the bubble of tension that had formed. She wondered if she was really ready to change. The idea of confronting her own limitations and prejudices felt overwhelming. As soon as work hours ended, she stepped away from the group and decided to take a walk. She needed fresh air, a moment to think. As she walked through the busy streets of the city, she remembered Lisa and the conversations they had about allowing oneself to feel. Her friend always said that vulnerability was a powerful form of connection. It was something Sarah had never fully understood. Now, however, it seemed that the path to change required exactly that, allowing herself to feel and face her emotions head-on. Before we continue with this exciting story, take a moment to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any stories, and let us know which city you are watching this video from in the comments. That night, as she tried to fall asleep, Sarah's mind was racing. She thought about James. his words, and how he was willing to face challenges. She remembered the stories he had shared and the painful experiences many faced daily. What if she could be part of the solution? The idea left her restless and hopeful at the same time. The next day, when she arrived at Vista Urbana, Sarah decided she needed to talk to Marco. He needed to understand that change did not mean weakness. It was an opportunity for growth. When she found him in the kitchen, she took a deep breath and approached him. "Marco, can we talk?" He looked at her with suspicion, but nodded. "What do you want, Sarah?" "I just wanted you to know that I really want to improve, not just for myself, but for all of us. What do you think could be done to make our environment more welcoming?" Marco crossed his arms, looking at her with a mix of skepticism and curiosity. "Do you really think things can change here? That people will care?" The question made him hesitate. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility. It was easy to give up, just like many did, but she was determined not to be one of them. "I want to believe that we can make a difference. But for that, I need you by my side. Can we work together?" Her words seemed to shake Marco a bit, but there was still resistance in his eyes. "We'll see," he replied before walking away. Sarah left the kitchen with a mix of hope and apprehension. The path ahead was filled with challenges. She knew that changes wouldn't happen overnight, and that new failures could arise at any moment. But there was something different now. She was willing to face the obstacles, to question her own beliefs, and to seek connection with others. And who knows, in the process she might create a space where everyone felt valued and respected. The next day brought a different atmosphere to Vista Urbana. Sarah felt a slight trace of hope lingering in the air. She was still processing the conversation with Marco, but the determination to change was stronger than ever. However, what she didn't know was that fate had unexpected plans for her. As the restaurant began to fill with customers, a group of young people entered, laughing and chatting animatedly. Sarah noticed that one of them, a boy with messy hair and a shy smile, seemed a bit out of place. He looked around as if he were in an unfamiliar place. As he approached the counter, Sarah decided to take the initiative. "Hi, welcome to Vista Urbana. Can I help you with the menu?" The young man replied with a shy smile. I just want a coffee, please." His voice was low, almost hesitant. Sarah noticed that he seemed nervous, as if he were facing some kind of internal battle. While she prepared the coffee, she heard a shout coming from the kitchen. One of the cooks, visibly irritated, was arguing with another team member. The tension in the air escalated, and the voices began to rise. Sarah felt her stomach churn. The environment she so desperately wanted to change was going through a new crisis, and she didn't know how to handle it. The young man, noticing the commotion, looked at Sarah with concern. "Is everything okay here?" He seemed genuinely interested, and that touched something inside her. It was as if, amidst the chaos, he represented a light of hope. "Yes, just some normal kitchen discussions," Sarah replied, trying to calm him. But deep down she knew it wasn't just a normal argument. It was a reflection of what was happening within the team and in her own life. As she handed him the coffee, Sarah decided she needed to talk to James. She found him in the office, staring at the computer screen with a focused expression. "James, can you help me with something?" she began, her heart racing, but the determination still pulsing within her. "Sure, what do you need?" James replied, turning to her. "I see that things are complicated here, and I feel like we need to do something. I can't change things alone, but I want the team to feel more united. What do you think?" Her question was loaded with emotion, and James noticed the seriousness in her gaze. "That's a good point, Sarah. But are you willing to face the resistance?" "It won't be easy," he said, with a slight sigh. "Yes, I'm willing. Sometimes you have to face things head-on to really change," she replied, feeling stronger with each word. However, before James could respond, an explosion of voices echoed through the kitchen again. The atmosphere was tense, and Sarah knew she needed to act. Without thinking twice, she decided it was time to gather the team and openly discuss what was happening. If she wanted to create a welcoming environment, she needed to first address the existing problems. When Sarah called the team together, the room was filled with skeptical looks. Marco was there, arms crossed, and other team members seemed doubtful. She felt her heart race, but took a deep breath and began to speak. "I know things haven't been easy. We're facing challenges, but I truly believe we can improve. We need to find a way to work together." The reactions were mixed. Some nodded, while others rolled their eyes, but she continued, "I'm learning too. I've realized that my own insecurities may have affected the way I interact with you and the customers. I'm here to learn from you, and for us, to grow together. At that moment, the young man who had ordered the coffee entered the room, drawn by the conversation. He looked around at everyone with a concerned expression. "Sorry to interrupt, but I heard you talking. I'm new here, and I just wanted to say that as a customer, I really value when a place cares about people. That makes all the difference." The sincerity in the young man's words silenced the room. Sarah felt a wave of emotion as she realized that this simple act of vulnerability could have such a powerful impact. The voices of discontent began to diminish, and a sincere dialogue started to emerge. Marco was the first to break the silence. "Maybe we've let things get to a point where no one feels good. If you're willing to work on this, so am I." Change didn't happen overnight, but that moment became a significant turning point for Sarah and the team. The tension that had once dominated the environment began to give way to a spirit of collaboration and understanding. Sarah realized that by confronting her fears and insecurities, she had also opened space for others to do the same. And so, amidst the challenges and difficulties, a new era began for Vista Urbana. Sarah felt that she was finally on the right path. The journey would be long and full of obstacles, but there was one undeniable thing. Change was underway and she was willing to face it, one step at a time. The following day brought a lightness that Sarah hadn't felt in a long time. Vista Urbana was more vibrant, and although there were still challenges ahead, she could sense that the atmosphere had changed. The team seemed more willing to communicate, and even the small smiles exchanged between co-workers brought a renewed air to the environment. However, the new dynamic was not without its obstacles. During the morning shift, Sarah noticed that some team members were still hesitant to open up. There were murmurs and suspicious glances, especially from Marco, who, despite having committed to collaborating, still carried some resistance. Sarah felt a weight in her chest as she realized that change would not happen overnight. By the end of the shift, she decided it was time for a frank conversation with Marco. He was leaning against the wall, looking at the floor, and Sarah approached him. "Hi Marco, can I talk to you for a minute?" Her voice was soft but determined. "Sure," he replied without looking up. Sarah took a deep breath. "I noticed that you still seem a bit distant. I understand that change can be difficult, but we need to work together to make this work." He finally looked up, and his face was filled with frustration. "Look, Sarah, I'm not against the idea of making things better, but I've seen many empty promises before. What guarantees me that this won't be just another futile attempt?" His words hit her like a punch in the stomach. Sarah realized that in her quest for positive change, she hadn't considered the team's past experiences. "I understand your distrust, Marco, but I really want to hear your ideas and concerns. We can do this together." He hesitated, but instead of shutting down, he began to share his frustrations about the lack of communication and the tense atmosphere that had dominated the restaurant. Sarah listened attentively, recognizing that for change to be real, she would need to be willing to hear the voices that had previously been ignored. The next day, while setting up the tables for lunch, Sarah reflected on the conversation. She felt excited, but also overwhelmed. The pressure of leading a team that was so divided made her wonder if she really had the ability to guide them toward a more collaborative environment. When the young barista walked in again, Sarah felt relieved. He always seemed so genuine and curious. "Hey, you're back!" Sarah exclaimed, smiling. "Yeah, I couldn't resist." "The coffee was so good," he replied with a smile. "How are things going here?" "We're trying to make some changes. It's a bit complicated, but we're trying to understand each other better as a team," Sarah said, feeling a wave of vulnerability. The young man looked at her with understanding. "Change is hard, but it's good to see you're trying. Sometimes just one sincere gesture can make a difference." His words resonated in her mind. Sarah realized that her own journey of change was not just about the team, but also about herself. She needed to keep challenging herself to be more open and vulnerable. However, as the days went by, new obstacles arose. One of the cooks decided he didn't want to participate in team meetings. He felt excluded and thought his voice wasn't being heard. Sarah tried to approach him, but he dodged her, leaving her frustrated. It was hard to rally everyone around a goal when some people still felt marginalized. One night, while cleaning tables after closing, Sarah encountered Marco again. He was sitting at a table, staring into space. "Are you okay?" she asked, sitting down across from him. "I'm just thinking," he replied. "This change, it's harder than I thought. I want to believe, but what if it all ends in frustration?" Sarah felt a connection. "I'm scared too. But what I realize is that even if things don't change immediately, The intention to want to improve is already an important step. We're all in this together. The exchange with Marco was a moment of sincerity that made Sarah realize that vulnerability could be a powerful strength. She was not alone in her struggles, and by opening up, she could encourage others to do the same. As the days turned into weeks, Sarah found herself battling uncertainty, but also experiencing small victories. The team began to open up gradually, and even those who were more skeptical started to share their ideas. Change, though slow, was happening, and each step forward brought a new level of hope. However, Sarah knew that the road was still long. Each new resistance was a reminder that she needed to continue working not just for the team, but also for herself. True change began within her, and she was determined not to give up. Sarah observed the team around her and felt that despite the challenges, something was changing. The environment at Vista Urbana was starting to transform, but the road ahead was still long. She knew she needed to confront her own fears and insecurities so that she could guide the team toward a new path. In the days that followed, Sarah faced her greatest challenges. The pressure for everything to work perfectly was suffocating. She often wondered if she was really capable of leading such a diverse group filled with different experiences. The voices of doubt still echoed in her mind, and there were moments when she felt lost. One morning, while organizing the ingredients in the kitchen, one of the cooks, Gustavo, approached her. He was known for his strong temperament and had recently been reluctant to participate in meetings. "Why do you care so much about this, Sarah?" he asked. "It's just a job. It doesn't make a difference to me." His words cut like a blade. Sarah felt a wave of frustration. She knew that this change was important, but how could she convince Gustavo to see that? Instead of losing her composure, she took a deep breath and replied, "Because I believe we can all make a difference, Gustavo. It's not just about a job, it's about what we build together." Her response seemed to have an impact. Gustavo looked at her in surprise, as if he were seeing a new side of her. "Maybe you're right," he murmured, "but sometimes it's hard to believe." That conversation lingered in Sarah's mind. She realized that it wasn't just the team that needed to open up, but also herself. The fear of failure kept her trapped in a cycle of uncertainty. It was time to set aside her insecurities and trust that she could rely on others. That night, reflecting on the day, Sarah made a decision. The next day, she would prepare a special meeting where everyone could express their feelings, fears, and hopes. She didn't just want to hear the voices. She wanted each team member to feel that their contribution was valuable. When the day arrived, the tension was palpable. Many team members were nervous and some looked at Sarah with suspicion, but instead of being intimidated, she began to speak sincerely. She shared her own insecurities and how she had learned that vulnerability could be a strength. "I am not perfect and I don't have all the answers, but I want each of you to feel comfortable sharing what you feel. We're in this together." Gradually, Sarah's words began to break down barriers. Marco was the first to open up, sharing his frustrations about the lack of communication. Others soon joined in, and the room filled with voices. What had started as a tense meeting transformed into a safe space where everyone could express their concerns. Sarah realized that she was not alone in her desire for change. As the team came together, Sarah also began to see the true essence of success. It wasn't just about financial results or praise, but about building relationships and an environment where everyone felt valued. She began to understand that the wealth of a team was not measured by profit, but by the connections formed. Each week, the team became more cohesive. Sarah noticed subtle but significant changes. The atmosphere at Vista Urbana was lighter and more cheerful. She felt that every small progress was a victory. Her heart filled with gratitude as she saw that the effort was paying off. However, not everything was smooth sailing. The path still had its obstacles. There were days when conflicts arose and old doubts threatened the harmony. But instead of letting herself be discouraged, Sarah began to apply the lessons she had learned. Each conflict was an opportunity for growth, and she was determined not to give up. One day, while clearing the tables, Sarah sat down with Marco again. "I really admire how hard you've been working. The team is improving and you're a part of that," she said sincerely. Marco smiled, and for the first time, she saw a light in his eyes that had previously seemed dim. The friendships within the team began to strengthen, and Sarah realized she had found a new purpose. She was not only leading, but also learning from each of them. The vulnerability that had once intimidated her had now become her ally. Each challenge faced helped her grow and become a stronger leader. Sarah understood that true transformation was happening not only at Vista Urbana, but within herself. She was learning to trust herself and others. And with each step, she was becoming a better version of herself. The atmosphere at Vista Urbana was charged with anticipation. Sarah knew that this particular day could define the team's future. A new project was about to be presented, and the pressure for everything to go smoothly was palpable. There was a mix of anxiety and hope in the air, and she felt her own heart racing with each passing minute leading up to the meeting. As she entered the room, Sarah saw all the team members seated, each with their expressions of nervousness and anticipation. The project was a new line of dishes that promised not only to innovate the menu, but also to attract a different audience to the restaurant. It was an opportunity that could change everything, but it also represented a significant risk. If they failed, it could be disastrous. Before starting, she looked around and recognized the familiar faces. Marco, who had been so vocal about his frustrations before, seemed anxious but determined. Gustavo, on the other hand, was with his arms crossed, his expression closed. Sarah took a deep breath, remembering the conversations they had. It was time to put into practice everything she had learned. "Hi, everyone," she began, her voice steady but welcoming. "Today we're here to present our new project. But before we start, I want to remind you that this is a safe space. Everyone has the right to express their ideas and concerns." As she laid out the idea, she noticed that some gazes drifted away, while others seemed more engaged. When she finished, it was Marco's turn to speak. "I think the idea is good, but what if it doesn't appeal to our current audience? What do we do if it doesn't work?" Marco's question echoed in the room. Everyone seemed to be waiting for an answer. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders, but she also understood that it was an opportunity to showcase the new dynamic they were trying to build. "If it doesn't work, we'll learn from it," she replied. "The most important thing is that we are in this together. Each of you has a crucial role, and I want to hear your opinions." Gustavo stood up, his voice heavy with frustration. "But what if we are just following a trend? What if this takes us away from who we really are? We can't forget who we are in the process of trying to please everyone." He was nervous, but his passion was evident. Sarah realized that this was the turning point. The distrust that had settled among them could crumble all the work they had done to unite. Instead of reacting defensively, she decided to open up even more. "I understand your concern, Gustavo. The truth is that we all fear failure. I do too, but I've learned that failures teach us, and more importantly, they don't define who we are." The room fell silent. Sarah's words resonated, and she saw expressions change. Marco looked at Gustavo and then at Sarah. "Maybe it's time for us to take a bit of a risk. If we don't try, we'll never know," he said with more conviction. It was then that Sarah realized the tension was slowly dissipating. The dialogue opened up, and other members began to express their opinions, concerns, and ideas. The conversation flowed, and each person brought something new to the table. The fear of failure began to transform into a sense of camaraderie. However, the real test was still to come. By the end of the meeting, Sarah felt that everyone was more aligned, but there was still a shadow of uncertainty. The project was risky, and the day of the presentation to the investors was approaching quickly. Sarah knew she would need more than just words. She needed to show her colleagues that unity and trust were the keys to success. In the following days, Sarah decided that each team member would have an active role in preparing the presentation. She organized rehearsals, encouraged participation from everyone, and sought ways to incorporate the ideas that emerged in the meeting. The energy was shifting, and the team began to work together in a way they had never done before. Old rivalries and insecurities transformed into mutual support. Finally, the day of the presentation arrived. Sarah was nervous, but looking at the team around her, she felt a wave of courage. They were no longer just colleagues. They were a united team, ready to face any challenge together. When it was time to present, each of them had the chance to shine, bringing their ideas and passions to the forefront. By the end of the presentation, the investors were impressed. The project was approved, and the team erupted in applause. Sarah felt tears of joy in her eyes. The struggle she had faced, the insecurities she had overcome, and how each of them came together to reach this moment touched her deeply. In that instant, Sarah realized it wasn't just about material success or the approval of investors. What truly mattered was the transformation that had occurred within them. They learned to trust each other and support one another, and that was more valuable than any award they could receive. With the team by her side, Sarah felt that she had finally found her voice as a leader, and more importantly, she had found her place in a world that had once seemed so uncertain. The journey wasn't over, but now she knew that regardless of future challenges, she could count on her friends and colleagues to face them, and that was the true wealth she had always sought. After the successful presentation, Sarah felt a mix of relief and euphoria. The team was radiant, and the atmosphere at Vista Urbana had completely changed. What had once been a space filled with tension now pulsed with enthusiasm and optimism. People were hugging, sharing laughter and expressions of joy. Sarah watched all of this with a smile on her face, her heart light. In the following days, the restaurant began preparing for the new line of dishes. The team was more united than ever. Each person seemed motivated and willing to contribute their ideas and skills. Sarah realized that, although the project was just beginning, the true victory had already been achieved. The transformation of the group into a cohesive team. In one of the planning meetings, Marco stood up with a sparkle in his eyes. "I can't believe we did it. I never thought we would be able to work together like this. I feel like we are finally a real team." His words touched everyone present. Gustavo, who had seemed so skeptical before, also agreed. "I was wrong to doubt. What happened at the presentation was incredible. I've never seen everyone so aligned." Sarah felt a warmth in her chest upon hearing this. It was a recognition of what she had fought to build. She knew it had been a challenge, but now she saw that every effort had been worth it. "This is just the beginning," she said with a smile. "We are just learning to use our strengths together. Let's keep this up and make this place even more special." As the new menu began to take shape, Sarah noticed how conversations and ideas flowed naturally. The team was more open and willing to listen to one another. They valued what each person had to offer. The rivalries that had existed before transformed into respect and friendship. Sarah felt grateful for insisting on the importance of communication, even when things seemed difficult. However, not everything was perfect. On one of the testing days with the new dishes, one of the plates didn't turn out as planned. The team grew anxious, fearing that this could affect the reception of the new menu. Sarah, however, saw this as a learning opportunity. "Let's use this to our advantage," she said, reassuring everyone. "Let's adjust and improve. This is how we grow." The way Sarah handled the situation made the team respect her even more. Instead of panicking, she encouraged everyone to focus on solutions. That positive approach made everyone feel more secure and confident. And of course, the dish was adjusted, and the feedback from customers was extremely positive. As the weeks went by, the new menu was officially launched. Vista Urbana was busier than ever, attracting new customers and receiving constant praise. Sarah watched the full tables, listening to the laughter and conversations that filled the space. The warm and welcoming atmosphere of the restaurant reflected the new dynamics of the team. On a particularly busy night, while everyone worked together to serve the customers, Sarah paused for a moment to observe. She saw Marco and Gustavo laughing together in the kitchen, and a wave of happiness washed over her. She realized that it wasn't just the food that brought people to the restaurant, but the energy and passion that the team conveyed. After service, Sarah gathered the team for a brief moment of relaxation. "I want to thank each one of you. You have shown that no matter how challenging the path may be, together we are stronger. The success of this project is a reflection of the work and trust that everyone has put in here." The looks of her colleagues shone with gratitude. Marco turned to her and said, "You gave us the courage to believe in ourselves, Sarah, and that made all the difference." Gustavo nodded, adding, "I'm glad I was wrong. I learned so much from all of you." In those moments of connection and friendship, Sarah realized that the true victory was not just the success of the new menu, but the transformation that had happened within each of them. They learned to trust each other, to support one another, and above all, to value the journey they were sharing. As the night came to an end, Sarah smiled, finally feeling at home. She knew she could face any challenge in the future, because now she had the team by her side. With a heart full of hope, she prepared for what was to come, confident that together they could achieve anything. The Vista Urbana team continued to grow and thrive, and Sarah watched everything with deep pride. Over the weeks, they not only created a new menu, but also built bonds of friendship that became the foundation of the restaurant's success. Sarah realized that by facing challenges and learning from mistakes, each of them transformed in unexpected ways. What was once a group of strangers was now a true family. In this journey, Sarah learned to appreciate not only the final result, but all the effort and dedication that each one put into the process. She remembered the moments of tension, the doubts and insecurities, and how together they managed to overcome each obstacle. This experience not only made her stronger, but also taught her the importance of believing in the abilities and potential of others. She understood that true success is not measured solely by numbers or praise, but by the ability to unite people around a common goal. With the new menu fully operational and the restaurant full, Sarah decided it was time to celebrate the journey they had shared. She organized a special night for the team where everyone could relax, share stories, and laugh together. As she watched her colleagues' interactions, she saw how each one had grown. Marco was more confident, Gustavo more open, and everyone was willing to share their visions and experiences. It was a reflection of what they had achieved together. However, while the team celebrated, Sarah couldn't help but remember an old rival, the chef of a neighboring restaurant, who had always tried to undermine her work. He had made spiteful comments about Vista Urbana and its new proposals. Sarah decided it was time to step up and show that she would no longer let negative words affect her. Instead of letting herself be down, she found a way to handle the situation maturely. The team, inspired by Sarah's new attitude, decided that the best response to the rival would be to continue offering exceptional service and delicious dishes. They dedicated themselves to further enhancing the quality of the food and the customer experience, turning criticism into motivation. Over time, Vista Urbana began to attract more customers and gain recognition. Positive comments spread, and the rival who had once tried to undermine her work began to notice that the restaurant was standing out in the community. At the end of the celebration night, Sarah sat down with her team and reflected on everything they had achieved. "We accomplished more than just a new menu," she said. "We showed that the unity and strength of each one of us can overcome any challenge. The true triumph is not just the success of the restaurant, but the friendship we built and the trust we have in each other." She realized that instead of seeking revenge, she had found a way to triumph through hard work and dedication. The rival, who initially seemed a threat, became just a reminder that focusing on one's own journey and personal growth is the most powerful path. With this new perspective, Sarah invited everyone to share their own experiences and reflections on overcoming challenges and growth. "Let's continue to inspire each other and turn challenges into opportunities," she encouraged. And so, the Urban View team not only established itself as a successful place, but also as a space where people could find friendship and support. Sarah, now more than ever, felt ready to face any challenge that came her way, knowing she had a solid team by her side. If you have also faced challenges and overcome difficulties, share your story in the comments. Together we can inspire and learn from each other. Like and subscribe for more stories that remind us of the power of unity and overcoming. Don't miss the chance to be part of this journey.